Hello everyone, and welcome to A Foreigner Farming in the Philippines. I get a lot of comments from masons and bricklayers about how they would lay the blocks differently if it was them, and why don't I teach them the proper way to do it. I'm by no means a mason, but I have laid cinder blocks before, so I do know a little bit about it. I have a lot more expertise in setting tile, but I have laid some cinder blocks. But I'd like to kind of explain to you why they do what they do, and why to an actual mason the work here to them looks like crap. So I want to try to illustrate why the Filipino workers do it the way that they do. And the best explanation that I can give is it's the blocks themselves. It's what they have to work with. So I wanted these blocks are all from the same manufacturer, and they were all made on the same day. All right, they're not different batches, one from here, one from another place, one a month ago. These were blocks that we ordered day before yesterday and were delivered yesterday. Now the blocks on the right I stacked horizontally. Those blocks right there, I put a straight edge on it. The blocks on the left have had the straight edge put on. And on the right, you can see the differences in thickness. The two middle blocks are sticking out, I don't know, a good half an inch over the top and the bottom block. All right, so you have different heights in the blocks. They're not uniformly made here. There's not that much difference in the height, which would turn into the width of the block, but there is a difference. It's a small difference, but there is a difference. The real difference is in the height of the block. In this one given batch, there's blocks with a half an inch difference. And you can see it as well here. I put a straight edge on the back of these blocks, and you can see that they're not square either. That block right there, the third one from the end, as you can see, it's on the bottom. It's the same. It's the same as the block next to it, but as it comes up to the top, there's a 1/4 inch difference. So all the blocks on this side had a straight edge put against them. So on the bottom, they're all the same. When you come over on this side and you look, there's a 1/4 inch, 1/8 to a 1/4 inch difference in length of the blocks, and they're not square. You can see that there's different, the holes are different. The holes are different in width. They're all 3 inches wide, but some are a little thicker walled than others. And this is the same block maker. I assume he has two different molds. Now the cinder blocks that we're used to using in the States have a tolerance, I think, of 1/64 of an inch per block. These have a tolerance, I'm thinking, of a 1/4 inch per block. Now if you try to run these in a line even 20 feet using a good 3/8 inch mortar seam, in that 20 feet using these blocks, you're going to have no mortar between some blocks and a half an inch between some other blocks. So that's the reason that they just pretty much make a guess and make their mortar seams about an inch, because they never know which kind of block they're going to pick up, if it's a thin one or a fat one or a long one or a short one. So they've got to kind of guess as they go along. It's another reason that they don't generally butter the ends. When I first got here, that drove me crazy more than anything else, is that you can see here a little bit fell in from this seam, but they don't butter the ends. And that made me just almost pull out what little hair that I've got, that they wouldn't butter the ends. But because you have different lengths in the blocks and they're not square, you can see this block was on a chalk line as it was laid in. But this one is almost touching here, and it's got a 1/4 inch gap at the top. So in defense, and it's the same here, you see here, almost no gap, at least maybe 1/2 inch there. Same here. So in defense of these Filipino bricklayers, they're doing the best they can with what they've got. That's a good illustration there. I mean, the block is touching in the back, and there's this much gap in the front. They're doing the best they can with what they got. You're not going to get those nice pretty seams that you can just go along with your finger and make a nice little grout line. It's just not going to happen here because the blocks themselves are such poor quality. And the reason that they're such poor quality is that these are basically backyard made blocks. Even the professional block makers, it's just a couple of guys with shovels that mix the sand and mix the cement. It goes into a maker that makes I think 3 blocks at a time, and what they do is they pull them out of the mold, and instead of putting them in a line like this to dry individually and separately, they almost always begin to stack them. So they take uncured green blocks that are still soft, and they'll start stacking them like this. And what that does is warp them to height, and they pull them out of the mold so fast that it makes them to where they're not square. So they're doing the best they can with what they've got. I tried to lay these blocks myself with a nice 3/8 inch seam. It's impossible. I ended up I made 3 blocks high one time and had to end up putting a 1 inch seam in it on the rest. And some of the joints had no mortar in them. Because believe me, I'd like to see a nice uniform wall myself, but you can't do it with these blocks. The only other option is to buy your own block machine and make them yourself, but I didn't have enough foresight to do that, because a lot of this construction was done in my absence. So the blocks would have been made when I wasn't here anyway, and then I think there's 2,200 blocks in the house here. So those blocks would have been made the Filipino way, because I wouldn't have been here anyway to supervise the block making. So on the piggery itself that's going up there on the hill, we're just going to buy the blocks that we can buy, because it's not all going to be constructed at one time. It's going to be a piecemeal affair, because we are on a budget. So it is what it is. But just wanted to make this short little video to kind of defend the way that the Filipinos do things here. They do the best they can with what they got, and in the end it turns out pretty good.